anything set in stone, but they were to get kind of ideas going as to what characteristics would define a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So maybe we can just take a minute on your own to look at the sections and see if there's any that either need to stay, need to go. There's some that we can add. And the next step will be we'll actually go through and decide on additions. And Susan will help us go through a rapid process. Well, let's just take a minute.
And maybe especially focusing, Jen, as you've said before, is on especially 1 and 5, because those are the outliers. Here's what maybe a not so good organization would be doing, you know, from an employee engagement standpoint, and number 5 would be, you know, more leading practice or best behaviors associated with and practices for employee engagement. And as Jen said, we'd sure be interested in getting, you know, going around the horn and getting some feedback on what you think of especially 1 and 5, and things that are left out, observations you have, and you know, Susan is keeping track of these comments as well.
So at this time, I wanted to recognize Alice has a question.
Hi, yeah, thank you. In just looking at this, I just noticed one thing that jumped out at me. And under number 2, it says employees resistant to do more when asked, and I didn't see that reflected as clearly under number 1. And I can definitely see that needing to be pulled into number 1. And in fact, maybe even that they file grievances or they go to their unions if they're asked to do anything more. That seems like something that needs to be captured there.
So Alice, just so that I'm clear, you want also to reflect employees resistant to do more when asked in 1, in addition to 2.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, maybe even, you know, escalate a bit in number 1.
Yeah. So we certainly want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of review what we have there. And I think Jen will prompt us when we're going to start the exercise. So thank you for that, Alice.
Mert has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to share an observation, but I don't know if it's better for part of the exercise. I'm happy to do it now or later.
So Jen, what's your thought? Do you want to move into the exercise?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, because it sounds like people are geared up and ready to go. So, Susan, sorry, are we putting them in the chat and people can state out loud?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with level 5. So thinking about the characteristics of an organization that's just doing really great with engagement. And if your organization is already there, think about some of the dynamics of your workforce. And Susan will be keeping track of any that you type into the chat. But we'll take a minute, maybe a minute and a half to do what's called rapid fire. There's no right or wrong answer, so just blurt them out.
Yep, so at this time, what I'd like people to do, you can go ahead and enter your comments for just the characteristics of level 5 in the chat. And what I will do is, as I see them come up, I will call on you and you can voice them to the group. So I'll give you just a moment to start putting your thoughts into the chat at this time. Because the list that you see on the screen under level 5, that's not the end all be all. So there must be others that we could add as well. So somebody said, how about fear and safety? And who was that?
That was Cello, because I think that maybe...
Your microphone, Cello.
I'm sorry. The idea is that in some organization, there's more fear or less fear or more feeling of people feeling safe that they can speak out, or less fear that they can speak out. So I'm wondering if that would belong here or perhaps in the organizational culture or both. I just wasn't sure. So I just wanted to put that on the table.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is for level 5 on the maturity model, there would be less fear and more safety. Is that correct?
That's correct. That people are not, that people feel free to bring up their ideas and stuff like that.
So there is that concept of psychological safety.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so continue adding your items into chat as I'm finishing Cello's thought. Okay, and the next one is from Lisa. Oh, Lisa said him. Go ahead, Lisa.
Button. I was just building off of what Cello brought up, that employees feel safe to speak up about concerns, challenges, and opportunities. So it's pretty much a full field or full openness about everything that they may have input on. I'm complete.
Thank you, Lisa. Alice, you have the next comment.
Yeah, I was just trying to point out that especially in public service, a lot of times having employees just kind of stuck in the same place is high retention, but it's not always good. Sometimes some of the best companies actually have people leaving because they're moving on to better opportunities, and that's seen as a positive thing. And so just wanted to mention the complexity of it. I don't think it needs to be removed, but just to think about it in a little more complex way than just, oh, everybody stays, so we must be good.
Okay, thank you. Joseph.
Yes, the person who just talked about the retention, I totally buy into that. I think that's a huge problem that we have, or at least an observation that I have, that it's not always bad to have people sort of shift. If we could do a lot of cross training, we would be better off than having people stuck in the same position. But to the point that I raised, the problem solvers versus problem admirers, we have that tendency where everybody's great at diagnosing the issue and can rattle off all the problems, but an organization that has people that actually come to the table with solutions, I think is then you're in rarefied air, in my opinion.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. So again, thinking about characteristics of level 5 maturity, Cello, you had a thought in the chat.
Yes, Scott has his hand up. I think Susan's monitoring the chat, has Scott.
I'm doing both, Cello, so go ahead.
You're doing both. Okay, well, that's one more thing that I can do. So doing two things at once. So at the district where I work, they often say, well, people come here to change the world and stay for the benefits. I think that may be what Alice was referring to, and I think what Alice brings up is a good point. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Cello. Scott, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was trying to just type it in too. It was just a question for you, Susan, but they're also, the process allows, like Joseph did, to comment on the characteristics that are already listed and what their experience is too. It's not just creating new ones, right?
Yes, so what I'm doing, I'm just taking all the comments that are being put in chat and I'm putting them into a table and then we can group them later. So I've left the slide up so that people can look at the characteristics and I'll share the table after we're done.
Yeah, what I was meaning was, let's just say employee-led initiatives. Somebody might want to comment on that one as opposed to tweak it or they may want to modify it. But rather than just adding new ones to clump later, it's also just if they have significant experience with something, that's helpful for the group as well.
Correct. Thank you for that clarification. So Lisa, you are next.
Well, I think this is what Scott was referring to. This kind of builds on an earlier one, but quantifies it. They're taking on big challenges and consistently raising the bar. So we're not trying to just do better at the same old. We're saying, whoa, that's not going to be good enough. We need to come up with a new approach or a new idea, which is a big challenge, and it connects back to you got to feel safe to take risks. So I think one way of looking at that is if you see employees that are willing to take a risk and do the big challenges and they are being successful raising the bar, then they probably have a pretty good work environment to be doing so. I'm complete.
Thank you, Lisa. Mert, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to just make a point. Maybe it would help with other discussions too, but I kind of see that same level, let's say in a traditional hierarchical structure, I kind of see like same cross section in an organization actually doing some things in 5 and some things in 3 and some things in 2. So I think there's also a little bit of spread in this, even within the same level, but in general at different levels in the organization, because like utilities, we tend to be, I think, more like a triangle and less like a rectangle. I would love it if it was more lateral. So maybe the higher you go up in the triangle, you move a little bit maybe towards the right of this versus left. I kind of see those average bulk movements too. I want to throw it out there to incite some thinking around that.
Okay, thank you, Mert. So what I heard is you'll see cross sections of each of the model levels at all areas of the organization. Did I capture that correctly?
I wouldn't say all, but some areas of the organization.
Some levels, okay. And so Mert, if you want to lower your hand, unless you have a follow-up. Okay, thank you. And Scott, you have a comment.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I wasn't seeing anything on that list. Maybe it's implicit about the use of teams and groups of, teams associated with different kinds of initiatives. And, maybe people would want to comment on that.
Okay. So I've got that in here, use of teams for initiatives. And then Lisa, you have another comment.
So I think at a high level of engagement, employees are really focused on how can I do better? And so it's less about managers delivering the rating to the employee and more about the employee seeking feedback about getting, how well did I do? Where do you think I excelled or where I could improve? And so it's kind of a reversal. It's the employee seeking the input to improve versus the manager giving the employee feedback to improve them. I'm complete.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Next up is Mert. So if you want to share what you put in the chat.
I wanted to add another layer to what Scott noted, and that's around the use of teams, plus the organization of the teams is important too, so that it's representative. meaning it has different groups and different departments plus different levels in those departments contributing to those teams.
Great, thank you. And Cello, you are up next.
Yeah, I like the
Your
employee.
microphone.
I'm so sorry. I like the employee-led initiatives on level 5. I just wonder if we should also have the equivalent on level 1 defined.
So we will move on to level 1. Right now, we're specifically focusing on level 5. So if you could hold that thought, we will get there.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, I was just thinking, again, some of these may be implicit, but having clear behavioral expectations for the organization that are understood and followed.
Thank you, Scott. All right. Any other characteristics of level 5 maturity? Is it
Parajat.
Thank you. Parajat, go ahead.
So yeah, I was talking about peer-to-peer accountability, that when we are at 5, there is that trust within the employees that they are comfortable providing the feedback and sharing that, you were supposed to complete this and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Parajat. Lisa, you have a comment. Lisa's just on the brainstorming roll today.
I see at the high level of engagement, there's a lot of active knowledge sharing, and that kind of connects back a bit, I think, with the teams concept, that it's bringing multiple ideas together to come up with the best decisions, but it's also learning that takes place at the same time as people are sharing what they know about a particular goal or subject or challenge. So I think that idea of not holding the knowledge, and knowledge is power, has been an old model. I think knowledge sharing is an engagement model. I'm complete.
Okay, thank you. Alice, you have a comment.
Yeah, I think it's important, and this goes in with people feeling safe and comfortable saying what's on their minds, but, allowing for a high level of productive conflict, that, people really do sort of object to things and challenge things, and that's taken positively and handled well is a really good thing. I know here we have this thing we call Portland nice, where nobody wants to challenge anybody else, and that's not necessarily the best thing.
Ooh. Okay, thank you, Alice. Cello, you have a comment.
Well, I would suggest that if ideas are judged on their own merit and not on where they come from, that's a good sign.
Yep. Thank you very much. The ideas are starting to flow now. Scott.
Yeah, I think that part of the team thing or the engagement is that there isn't a hierarchy of whose opinions are the best, that all the voices are heard in an equal type of fashion. I mean, it doesn't mean that every employee is the decision maker, if it's a group process, but that all the voices are counted and important and considered equally.
Uh-oh. Just lost Jen. Bear with me one moment. I'm going to get her back on the line. Lisa, you are next.
Yeah, I think maybe this isn't the best way to say it, but it's not change for the sake of change, but it's not being afraid to change either. So I think employees are open to the idea of change and willing to explore what the reason for a change is, in terms of the need or the benefit, and what the possible ways of getting there would be. So it's like you got to be willing to consider change to begin with.
Thank you very much. Any other comments at this time?
Susan, while you're waiting for Jen, I would just pile on to what Lisa just said, and that there's even if there's change that impacts an individual, that individual is valued, and that there's a place for that, that employee and the future of that employee in the organization. So it gets back to fear also. Like, I don't want to, don't move my cheese. But when you move the cheese, it's basically there are opportunities in the face of that can go along with change that can benefit everybody.
Fantastic. Okay, I've got Jen back on the line. At this time, Lisa has a couple of final comments, and then Jen, should we move on, do you think?
Yes, and maybe we'll just go longer than a minute. I think that there's a lot of great ideas coming forward, and we'll just take what we need for number one. But did you say Lisa has? Yep,
Lisa has, I think it might be the final comment for level 5 maturity.
Okay, and then we can jump to level 1.
Level 1, yep. So Lisa?
Yes, I mean, this is the hope. I think the highest aspiration we can all hope for is that all of our employees have this vision of what the organization is striving to accomplish and what's important, and so they can see themselves in that vision and are able to bring leadership to the work that they do. And they're ready to engage, whether it's on a team or in what they do day to day, in helping to advance toward that vision. So I think this it's a much more empowered employee, and I think empowerment goes along with engagement. So I think you can't have one without the other. I'm complete.
Great. Oh, and then Cello, if you don't mind, Cello, I'll just take this one and talk about it. The fun factor. What did you want to expand on that?
Well, what I've seen is in places that are where I think it's people are having fun, really. They don't see work as a huge burden, but there's something to be said for people actually having a good time.
Outstanding. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Oh, Alice has one. Go ahead, Alice.
Sorry, I was just going off what Cello said. Don't mean to delay moving to the next one, but yeah, okay. I mean, people feel like they can bring their whole selves to work and feel valued as an individual person and not just as sort of a cog in the machine, I think is something important.
We were just talking about widgets this morning at our prayer meeting. Lisa.
Playing off of Cello's comment, what would fun look like? So it isn't parties, it's the fact that when you work together and accomplish something, it's a lot like being on a winning sports team. It's like, wow, look what we just did together. And you feel that positivity between each other. So I think that's an important aspect to be reflecting in this high level of engagement is fun because of what you're able to do. I'm complete.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. So at this time, Jen, do we want to move to considerations for level 1 characteristics?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll move to level 1, and thinking about what we just did for 5, it should be probably pretty easy thinking about opposite characteristics, and maybe there's even some that are a little more intense in terms of an organization that is really struggling, employees aren't engaged, and so we can go ahead and get started, same process, and Susan will document and Look for hands raised. Again, there's some components that are in here. We're not married to any of them, so we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. So what I will do is I want to give you guys an opportunity to add your comments to the chat. And if you can hear in the background, I need to go let an anxious puppy outside. So I will give you an opportunity to go ahead and add your comments to the chat, and I will be back momentarily.
It looks like Alice already started right ahead of.
That's correct. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Alice.
Yeah.
That was just what I stated earlier when I sort of jumped the line and got going before the exercise started. So it's that one about just saying that people are actively resistant to doing anything about their jobs. And in fact, they maybe even like file a grievance or go to the union or do something like that if asked to do something other than like their basic job duties.
I have.
Okay. I am back.
Okay.
So the first one is Alice.
She just did it, Susan.
She just did it? Fantastic.
Yeah, it was what I had said earlier, so you probably already have it captured.
Fantastic. Cello.
There's something that Chris Argyris and Sharon talked about in their books and articles about the espoused values versus values in use. And this is really organizational culture, but I think it impacts the workforce tremendously. And the espoused values being the values that appear on posters and are publicly declared versus whether people actually walk the talk. And I think that the discrepancy between the two has very toxic impact on the workforce, meaning that the message that comes, let's say, from the top of the organization is very different from what they see in real life.
Thank you, Cello. Lisa.
Well, this is the opposite of the last one I just talked about, where if employees have the vision, they can do much more of their own, thinking about what their contribution can and should be. And so the opposite end of that would be they're all waiting to be told what to do. So the leadership of the organization are basically giving way too much specific direction and taking too much control. So individuals aren't feeling empowered at all and therefore not engaged. I'm complete.
Thank you, Lisa. Mert.
Yes, so I think I would say it's kind of simple, but I would see lack of respect to each other, your sort of fellow employees, and to the mission of the organization. I would say that would be a level 1 characteristics for me.
Thank you, Mert. Cello, what I wanted to call out, you had given us a level 5, and I'm giving the opposite of that. So more fear, less safety in speaking out. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to connect that one. Mert, if you could share your comment to Cello.
Oh,
because
yeah,
Jen
I was
does not
just
have the opportunity to see the chat because she's not connected.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, I was very intrigued with the comment Cello made about the walking the talk, and if you don't, how that creates a toxic culture. I wanted to know the spelling of that author, so I could look that up later. Sorry.
I misspelled it.
Okay, but I'll find it. Oh, okay. Thank you, Cello.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa.
I think when you're a level 1, you don't even realize what you don't know. So I would say low engagement just seems like, what's the big deal? It's the way we are. That's the norm. So they need some help getting boosted out of that thinking and getting excited about having more engagement.
Thank you.
Susan, I think
Yes.
you accidentally skipped over me, and I just wanted to say, no problem, that
I don't see you in there.
well,
I don't see you in the. Oh,
I
you
did
are right. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Back on values, I think that having organizational values as a basis, just the fact of having them, you know, it's walking the talk. But if you don't even have them, then I think that is one thing. And then Alice or someone brought up unions, and that conflict. You know, things are going badly, you'd be having those kind of issues. But I think union collaboration could be part of employee engagement as well. On the 5, so you can have. We're just looking at opposites here, and some of the things that are being brought up on 1. You know, looking at what would the opposite be on 5.
Yeah. So opposite on 5, Scott, would be
the inclusion of unions in employee engagement processes.
So a level 1 would be unions not part of?
Not lacking that, and having conflicts and people running to unions would be some of the characteristics in 1, you know, which was brought up. But I was just pointing out the opposite of that we could reflect in 5.
Okay, so lack of union involvement / collaboration. My apologies for
no problem
missing that. Let me go back down. Alice.
Yeah.
If you could share your comment.
Yeah, I think this was kind of building on what Cello was saying, that not just being afraid to speak out, but also being punished when you do speak out. I actually once worked for an organization where they put out a survey, and then bosses tried to identify who in their groups said things and, you know, confronted them with it. And that's horrible.
Been there, done that. Not here, obviously.
Hey, Susan, it's Jen.
Yes.
And sorry if it's on there, you can't see, but did anybody put high number of grievances?
Nobody has said that yet. I can add that. One thing here. So I will add that, Jen. And Cello, if you could share your comment about peer pressure.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that sometimes when there's a tension between, let's say, line staff and management, that there's that's connected with my next comment, sort of us versus them mentality. So if somebody from the when there's a large power gap and lack of communication vertically, then if somebody may be pressured into not speaking out even by their peers, you know, by other staff members, because they're looked at as siding with the bad guys from downtown. That's at least what I've seen.
Thank you, Cello. Lisa.
Thank you. So at a level 1 versus at 5, you've got innovation and really incredible things happening. At a 1, you're very siloed, and so you're not thinking about all the stakeholders and those bigger benefits that could be attained. You're staying close and thinking more internal in terms of focus, and more of a what's in it for me with them versus a what's in it for us in that bigger picture. So I think that you know, that's the opposite of the 5s, would be to be really parochially focused. I'm complete.
Thank you. Thank you. Scott.
Yeah, I'm just piling on to an earlier Alice comment that what you have sometimes are organizations where you have a manager who is into progression within their employee progression and career plans within that or part of the organization, but not the organization in the whole, or not in terms of the overall goals of the employee. So I think I just threw in the word plans, career progression and plans at both ends of the spectrum. So at the low end, you know, it would be the lack of clear career progression and plans, and at the it would be the reverse on 5.
Okay, thank you. I just want to do a quick time check. So according to our agenda, this segment was scheduled to go until 10:20, which is 3 minutes away. So if we wanted to wrap this up, and Jen can then take us into the next steps. So if there are any other feedback that you'd like to add for level 1 maturity, you can do that now, or maybe take a little bit different direction here when Jen cues us up to the next segment.
Susan, I'll add in that the organization doesn't have structures and processes to capture employee ideas and to give that, or team processes to get them teaming together. So that's very key, I think, in establishing the norms of how we do work in a more engaged way.
Right. And so
I was starting to type it before you went on quickly, is that employees, it's the opposite of was having fear. It's being afraid to speak up and afraid to lend your voice to the process because of potential retaliation or you know, other kinds of issues.
I was actually, Scott, you and I were thinking the same way. I was going to say, you know, voices are not heard equitably.
Yes.
There's a fear of sharing ideas.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was starting to go over and bring things to the opposites. And one of the next things here is employees in the level 5, employees have an appetite for change. I would say, would you guys agree the opposite of that is employees don't care? Or they don't care if there's change. What do you think?
Yeah, they don't see the value in it, one. And then also maybe a fear of change. They don't trust the organization. There's kind of this, you know, why are they doing this? There must be something else.
Yeah, and Susan, just another quick thing is that employees, the bad characteristic would be if certain employees think that their ideas are the only good ideas, and that basically people should just follow along.
My comment kind of feeds off of what you were asking about, Susan, which is an employee who's more focused on proving that they're good isn't interested in that change stuff. So there's another element of why it's hard to get them to engage, because they just think they have to prove themselves. And the best way to do that is to improve with what, you know, I can do a little better than the last time. And I'm doing it right, and all that kind of stuff keeps people more wanting to stay static.
Yep. So we have one more comment. I see Cello has his hand raised, so I want to give the floor to him, and then we'll need to move on.
Just one small comment. I think that resistance to change is very natural response, because psychologically, every change is a loss and a gain. And people on balance have a much stronger reaction to loss than they have a reaction to gain. So therefore, every change can be threatening. So it's not a, how should I say, we should understand that reluctance to change, it takes some special things to overcome because it's a natural thing. So there have to be special conditions for people to be open to change. So it's a lot of work.
Okay, thank you, Cello. So I want to turn the floor back over to Jen at this time. We are going to wrap up the meeting for today. We will make sure that all of the comments that you shared are in the table and you can review it. And Jen's going to take us into what is coming next.
Thank you. So our plan was to go through the different levels, but I think we got a really great discussion going on levels 1 and 5. So if everyone is okay and in agreement, we would assign work outside of this meeting to look through 1 and 5 as they're listed. Susan will send it back out, and when we come back to our next meeting, see if there's any that are missing, anything that you might group together, or anything that you might say this should probably be removed. Also, as one step, we were going to look at what are some assessments or some metrics where we could identify just under levels 1 and 5. Probably 5 might be the easiest to gauge, but as we're saying, how do we tell that our organization is engaged? How do we tell that we're high performing? How do we tell these different dynamics that we've listed out? So maybe there's an assessment that your organization is using. Maybe there's something that's out there based on best practices or that you've heard of, or maybe it doesn't exist, but you're thinking these would kind of be some things that we might want to look for. For instance, our organization does an employee engagement survey, and it's a Likert scale, and they ask a number of questions, some along the lines of, I feel that my opinion is valued, I feel like I play an important role in the organization, I feel like I know where my work fits into our long-term strategic plan, so things kind of like that. So if we can come back for our next meeting, kind of, you've done some work looking at 1 and 5 on the maturity model. We will plan on tackling 2, 3, and 4, which those should be pretty easy. 3 will kind of be our midpoint, and then we can probably tweak 2 and 4 around that. And then we'll also talk about some assessments or measurements. How will we gauge those? Does anyone have any thoughts, ideas, suggestions? Are we in agreement that that would be a good next step?
So Cello, you have your hand raised.
Jen, I'm just offering, do you think that it would be okay if we put together a survey that would help people maybe rank and rate, these ideas that we've collected today? Do you think that's overdoing it, or you think it'll be okay?
Me personally, I think it would be overdoing it. That would be a lot to add them in, and maybe people can just kind of cross them out on, if Susan sends out the slide or sends it in a Word doc, I think people can just kind of cross out ones and they can order them, and then maybe they have some notes as well. Leaving it that way, I think will make it a little bit more free-flowing as opposed to a survey that might get kind of lengthy and time-consuming.
Okay.
Scott?
I just wanted to throw in something. I think some further, a little discussion in between would be helpful, the meetings. But one concept that I think that we saw play out here is that we were talking about certain characteristics that had what would be the very best and what would be the very worst associated with those characteristics. And so another way to look at the scale would be something like, to what extent do you have have these characteristics as leading characteristics as part of your organization? To what extent have you standardized and documented them? To how robust are they? You know, just kind of considering, you know, that some of them are going to show up across the board, but it's really to what extent have you, you know, where are you on the pathway to achieving the number 5? Just for consideration, but that's just an observation, because I think we were dealing with the opposites of, well, this would be the high and this would be the low, and then the in between is sort of your progress getting there. But
Okay, thank you, Scott.
I'm complete. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are at 3 minutes to the bottom of the hour. And to be respectful of everybody's time, want to thank everyone for your input today. As Jen mentioned, we will go ahead and get a document out, and we'll probably share it on the team site for editing, and we'll certainly turn on track changes on the document so that people are not overwriting others' thoughts. And just wanted to review our outcomes for today. So I'm going to get us back to a previous slide. So bear with me one moment. And it's not going to let me do it. So if I go page up. There we go. Okay, so our outcomes for today, we talked about the definition of the maturity models. We talked about the content for engagement in the maturity model. So we covered items 5 or maturity model 5 level and level 1 maturity. And Jen has talked to us about the homework for the next meeting. So with that, is there anything, what we want to do is we like to do a meeting wrap up and just find out, is there anything that you thought that went really well today or something that we could improve on for next time? So I want to open it up for discussion. So if you have thoughts on your mind, go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you in the order they come up. So the good, the bad, or the ugly.